Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the One Stump Short Podcast, episode 3, no less. And we are now on iTunes. Oh, very exciting. Welcome, as I said, to a new episode here, and kind of an interesting evening. It's sort of peak English cricket in the 2020 Blast tonight. Durham versus Worcestershire rained off, while Kent versus Sussex was delayed due to bright sunshine getting in the batsman's eyes. So, yeah, we've had about 6 days worth of sunshine in June, and most of those came at the start of the month, and one game has been delayed because of it. After so many games have been so affected by the rain, it was amusing, I think, to a lot of English cricket fans that the Kent game should be stopped because of excessive sunshine. But I'm going to use that as a slightly clumsy segue into a little bit of conversation about the 2020 Blast, which I don't feel, once again, I don't feel the English game is getting the most out of this 2020 competition. It's something I've spoken about on the blog before or on Twitter and kind of mentioned and briefly on the first two episodes of this podcast that I don't feel we're getting the most out of it. I mean, Dale Steyn played 5 games for Glamorgan. He arrived on the 1st of June. All he did was play 5 2020 games for Glamorgan, which was great for the county, but also feels like a bit of a waste at the same time. Brendan McCullum played, I think he played about 7 games in total for Middlesex, though I think one of those 2020 games might have been rained off. So he ended up playing once at Lords in the 2020, a couple of one-day cup games, and then he was off to the Caribbean Premier League. Likewise, Chris Gale only played the 5 games for Somerset, and it feels like a bit of a waste. You've got these big-name global stars with some name recognition coming in, and they play less than half a dozen games. And it just seems mad to me. The tournament started in May. It finishes on August 20th. That's when finals day is. It's just this whole massive sprawling thing. And I know that counties had said that attendances were good last year under a similar scheduling format. It just frustrates me that this is one area we kind of fall behind. I think the IPL, the Big Bash, and maybe even the Caribbean Premier League a little bit as well, is that it's so massive and sprawling. We don't really have the big stars for a significant amount of time. And I think that's a missed opportunity for teams. That they can only have a guy for maybe 4 5 6 games, and then he's off to do something else. And granted, some of that is Test cricket, but it's all a bit disorganised. Even in its most organised state, it still feels, just that it's not quite getting the support it maybe needs. And this might change next year. There's been talk of trying to condense it into a better block. I mean, this year's tournament, it clashes with the end of the IPL and the Caribbean Premier League. And that doesn't make sense to me because, you're almost trying to compete with one hand behind your back in terms of establishing yourself as a top 2020 competition in the world. Not many people point to the 2020 Blast as one of the better ones. They'll point to the Big Bash in the IPL, as I said, and so forth. But yeah, it's just something I think we could do better. I really enjoy the competition. I think the standard is very high. I think I've said this before. I would argue that in the broadest sense, the standard, if the Blast is better than the IPL, because I think the British domestic or the English domestic players are better. The difference is the money and the star power and the promotion. Hopefully, moving forward, that can change, though there is some cynicism in that point because I think several people, well, it's no secret, it's no secret that the ECB wanted to look at a franchise model. And I just don't know how that works. I'm not in favour of that at all. I like the 18-team system. I like the idea that someone like Kent or Leicestershire or Gloucestershire could win it. And obviously, Gloucestershire won the one-day cut last year. It's all these sort of things that factor into it. I like that idea that a Sussex could go on and win this, where they may not be able to win the county championship for several years. It could be another 5 6 years theoretically before they even compete for a county championship, let alone win one. Whereas the 2020, they've got a chance to win the Blast. So yeah, as I say, I'm not big on the franchise idea. I'm not always sure how it works. I mean, instead of Warwickshire seen an upturn in fortunes in one-day games because they're called Birmingham Bears or because they market themselves better. It's a little bit chicken and egg, I grant you. But yeah, it just doesn't work in my head. If they go for the main sort of test grounds as part of those franchises, so you've got Nottingham would be the one for the Midlands. Are Derbyshire, Northampton, Leicestershire fans going to come and cheer for Nottingham? What about in Yorkshire? I mean, there's people in Sheffield who've said before they'd never cheer for a Leeds team. If it's Yorkshire, even though they play at Headingley, it's still Yorkshire. Whereas if it's Leeds Lions or whatever, that's almost alienating half the existing franchise on the hope that you might be able to attract a few more people in, maybe. And there's no guarantees of bringing in anybody or any more people over and above what they already get, already attract, and already appeal to. That element I don't think is broken. It just needs to be better organised. But I'll use that as another slightly dodgy link into the next bit. As I said, the Caribbean Premier League just started at the weekend. It's being shown on Dave in the UK. I think it was on Premier Sports last year. Interesting to see how the CPL does on Dave, which is not traditionally been a sporting channel. Obviously, it's a comedy network, really. But they branched out. They're showing, I think, about 5 or 6, if I remember rightly. I may be wrong on that. 5 or 6 games live. They've got highlight shows for the rest. But the other interesting move the CPL has made is that games will be shown on Facebook in countries where there is no TV deal. So over here it'll be Dave and there'll be highlights and blah blah. But in Japan, for argument's sake, it'll be on Facebook. And this is an interesting concept. Other leagues and other sports have done similar things before. I think the KHL did it on YouTube a few years ago. And I think that's a positive step for the Caribbean Premier Leagues, because people think mainly of like the IPL and the Big Bash League when they think about the 2020 leagues. The 2020 Blast comes into it as well. CPL maybe not so much. This is a good way for them to try and reach more people in a global sense. I think there will be interest there, especially they've got some good names there. McCullum's out there and Gale and so forth, and Andre Russell. So I think it's a positive move for them. And I'm also interested to see what Dave do with the coverage, because there's talk of the ECB opening up the rights for cricket broadcast in England as well as soon as next year, I think, or maybe the end of this year. So it's interesting to see how they do and what that means for other potential interested parties who want to have a slice of the cricketing pie. Because at the moment it's pretty much all Sky apart from the CPL, which, as I said, last year was Premier Sports, if I remember rightly, which I subscribed to because they ice hockey, but obviously they were trying something a bit different there, as they have done with NASCAR and things. So interesting times on the broadcast front, and I wonder how much the CPL's impact will influence what may or may not happen with English cricket and things like the IPL and Big Bash. So, speaking of another 2020 subject, which kind of surfaced today, the Federation of International Cricketers Associations submitted a statement to the ICC, who met in Edinburgh recently, and a survey of 129 players from 7 different countries. Basically, it boils down to they thought there should be fewer tests and ODIs and more 2020s, and also that the Test and One Day International should have some sort of league format to give them more context. Now, this is something that's been discussed a few times. Obviously, there's the 2-division test system, and they have a Test Championship, which takes up part of the year, and then there's another part of the year for the bilateral series and all this sort of stuff. But I think a big chunk of this is money. So many things are. Now, one quote from the Telegraph's piece on this, which I think was a direct quote from the statement issued by the FICA, was that it estimates that a New Zealand player, just as an example, could earn around £171,000 from a central contract, playing 70 days of international cricket. But they could earn about £380,000 playing 32 days in 3 different 2020 leagues. Now that's not insignificant. That's a lot of money for half the effort, and that's something that the ICC has to think about. Again, this ties back to what I've just been saying with the 2020 Blast, which sporadically even only has England players. I've seen Joe Root play a game, and Johnny Bairstow played as well against Lancashire in the 2020, but then the day after, the Saturday after, which was literally 24 hours later, Alex Howes wasn't available for Notts. So we've kind of got this disjointed thing here, and it's kind of bleeding into other areas now. The piece in the Telegraph sort of outlined that it doesn't affect England, Australia, and India as much because their centrally contracted players are paid a lot more, but this affects South Africa. It's already affected the West Indies. Now, granted, there are more political elements to the West Indies cricket situation, but still, it's a major factor for them, and it's something that I think that people need to take heed of, because if there is that money out there, guys are going to start looking at just couldn't become mercenaries effectively. I don't blame them for that. It's a short career. You earn as much as you can in that short career, and obviously, if they're playing, 32 days worth of 2020, they've got other options then throughout the rest of the 320 days a year to do what they want, spend it with family. They can go and play domestic cricket somewhere or whatever. It gives them that much more options, and soon they're into reasonable, well, certainly or large, depending on how you want to term it, sums of money that they can take home. They can start to sort of stockpile nest eggs when they retire, and obviously if they're playing less cricket, they'll be fresher on the field, but again, they have more options off it. So not only do they get paid a good sum for playing cricket, they've also got time to study or learn other skills for when they retire. And there's all these little, complexities to it. And granted, it was a small sample, just over 120 players, and from 7 different countries, so it's not like a massive swathing set of or comprehensive across the entire spectrum of the FICA membership. But I think that people need to take a little bit of heed of what's being said there, especially their comments about 2020 as a gateway to the sport, which it so certainly has become in recent years. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. I'm also going to see what effect the Brexit has on European and Colpack players playing in England. Now, Isabel Westbury wrote a piece on not just cricket, she mentioned football and some other sports as well, and what the impact of Great Britain leaving the EU, or the UK leaving the EU, might mean for sports. And you look at teams like Glamorgan, who have Jacques Rudolph here as a Colpack player, but also Tim van der Gooten, who's a Dutch international. And they've been big players for Glamorgan. You've got Brendan Taylor at Notts, and even I don't know if it affects the Irish guys like Niall O'Brien so much, but what impact does this have? Because the ECB, I think, correctly managed to limit the agreement on Colpack players. So there were certain stipulations. So you couldn't just rock up in Bloemfontein and find a guy who looked like a decent spin bowler. He had to have played for South Africa and things like this, and still obviously was to renounce the intention to play for the national team. Blah, 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 blah. But the point is, these guys were coming over almost, I'll say willy-nilly, but in larger numbers. The EC managed to curb it, so you were still getting the quality players coming in like Rudolph or Taylor and Chesney Hughes and things, and Tino Best. So you're getting the quality in, but you're not over flooding the county game and completely preventing opportunities for young England players or young English players to come through. And I kind of like the balance they've got now. Are we going to say that there's young players at Glamorgan who can't learn from Rudolph? Young guys like Jake Libby at Notts who can't learn from Brendan Taylor? And so, there's that balance there to be found. I think they've got it at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward, because it wouldn't be the end of the world per se if it changed, but I think it would diminish the quality of English domestic cricket if some of these guys were lost to the game here. On top of that, I'd be quite sad to lose them as well. So interesting, very interesting times. It's obviously going to take a while to sort out, and even from the political point when Article 50 is invoked, there's going to be a couple of years before the UK fully leaves the EU, so the ECB will have time to work all this stuff out when push comes to shove and they actually need to work it out. So yeah, we'll see what goes on, we'll see what happens, and as I said, I hope it's treated in a sensible manner where even if things certainly change, the ECB looks at a way to maintain the quality level of English cricket, and certainly Division 1, which is a pretty good damn level of cricket right now. People sort of down on it a bit because of the support levels, but it's a good hard level of cricket, and it's a good contest week in, week out. But we'll see what happens. As I said, there's plenty of time on that front to even things out, and obviously the 2020 Blast, as I mentioned at the top, they've talked about franchises and what to do with that. So the domestic game might change anyway in the coming years. It was just something that kind of cropped up as almost like a side point, because so many people use sport as an escape from whatever else is going on in the world. But the Brexit thing, it affects sport as well. It seeps into so many areas of lives of the people in the UK that you just can't escape it. there is there's no way around it. There's if you were hoping your team would sign that French, football team on that French centre back, well, that might change as well. And, the idea of getting former South African internationally to open the batting for you, that might change. And so I'm heavily involved in ice hockey in the UK as well, and one of the elite league guys says he doesn't think it'll change much, but you always wonder. You always wonder in the back of your mind. It always, it always sort of tingles at the back there, and it's a curious one to see how it pans out and what happens with that one. But I'm going to leave it there for this episode. Quite a little bit of a shorter one, but a couple of little bits that had tickled me this week. And as I said, we're on iTunes now if you want to subscribe. Obviously, we're always on Spreaker as well and YouTube. And you can find the blog, onestumpshort.wordpress.com. You can find me on Twitter at robmcgregor35, or you can email onestumpshort@gmail.com. If you're so inclined, there's also a little PayPal donation link on the blog. All the money gets funded back into supporting the blog and the podcast and so forth. It goes towards equipment and hosting costs, things like that. Nothing major, but if you're so inclined to help, it's always greatly appreciated because I do it for the love of it. It's not changing, but it's not cheap at the same time to run the various accounts and hosting costs and so forth. But thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.